Quite recently, the American intelligence agencies have released information on what the Russian military or the Russian government wants to do, particularly in deploying nuclear weapons. This report states that the Russian military or government wants to deploy nuclear weapons in space. Now, the United States Army, right, has a similar program to that of Starlink, right? Basically deploying thousands of low orbiting satellites, right, for communication purposes, telecommunication. But in this case, it is particularly a military constellation of satellites to provide information, intelligence, and reconnaissance in a war situation. It is believed that this military program, right, of deploying a constellation of satellites in lower Earth orbit will cost the US military about 14 billion US dollars. Now, if the US Army is successful in deploying these satellites in lower Earth orbit, this would automatically give them the advantage in any war situation, be it identifying targets to attack, right? Or identifying certain positions and fortifications of the enemy. Now, and further, this system will be fundamentally connected to the current existing military equipment, be it jets, right? Be it what can I say, equipment that is land based, right? Or be it naval ships, warships at sea, right? So this system will act as a connector of the entire military equipment and military system of the United States of America, in which this will be extended to NATO countries. So you would have a huge military system, right, that is linked to NATO equipment, NATO airplanes, NATO radio systems, NATO radar systems, NATO warships, NATO naval bases, right, and even the soldiers themselves. Now, if this occurs, this would make it an unparalleled military system, right, that is fundamentally controlled by the United States. It is believed that the system will also have the capabilities of determining missile launches that come from the enemy to attack NATO countries or the United States. So, in regards to gathering of intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, there would be no system globally that would parallel this fundamental constellation, right? This military spy satellite constellation. Now, the main reason, right, that Russia would want to deploy nuclear weapons in space, right, is okay, let's start here. It's not to basically um, attack the landmass of NATO or the United States of America by launching missiles that have nuclear weapons or a nuclear warhead in it. So they are not doing this to launch a missile that would attack the landmass of the United States or NATO, right, from space. They are not doing it for this reason, right? They are doing it to, number one, create an EMP, right? An EMP stands for electromagnetic pulse. Now, when you take a closer look, right, into the detonation of a nuclear weapon, right? I'm sure you've seen videos of of when a nuclear weapon is detonated, right? It is characteristic by first seeing a blinding flash of light, right? And then you are hit by a shock wave, right? And then what follows after that, it is a cloud known as the mushroom cloud, right? Which is very characteristic of a nuclear detonated bomb on Earth, right? So those are the three stages that we know of when a bomb is detonated on Earth, right? But if you detonate a nuclear bomb in space, you would have a different effect than the seeing of a mushroom cloud like bomb, right? Now, in space, there is no atmosphere, right? So there will hardly be smoke that actually occurs there, right? So if you detonate this in space, the first thing that happens is that you're going to see a huge ball of fire that releases blinding light, right? Now, this light would be so bright that if you look into it or see it by accident, you would actually be blind, right? Now, the main reason Russia would want to deploy this is that if you detonate a nuclear weapon in space, it releases a very, very powerful EMP, right? An EMP is an electromagnetic pulse that has a highly charged radiation based, what can I call it? Shock wave. Now, when this shock wave, right, an EMP is released, this EMP has the ability to basically destroy certain equipment that is space based or that is placed in space, right? From telecommunication satellites, right? Weather satellites, satellites that determine the mineralization on Earth, right? It can also destroy a lot of satellites that you find in lower Earth orbit, right? In which you find this military spy satellite program by the United States, right? So, if Russia detonates a nuclear weapon, right, let's say slightly above the landmass of America, right? It means every electronic piece of equipment, every satellite, right? Every power stations and power lines, every telecommunication line, telephone lines, Wi-Fi, right? Anything that would be of electronic nature, right? Would basically be fried, right? That piece of equipment would be rendered useless or redundant in a war. So it means this electromagnetic pulse that would be released from the detonation of a nuclear weapon would fry the, the power in the United States. Your power stations would go up in smoke, right? Your transmission lines would go up in smoke, your radio lines would go up in smoke, Wi-Fi would go up in smoke. I know I'm repeating the list, but telecommunications would go up in smoke. Every electronic device, the computers, gaming, certain control centers that are controlled by the military would all be fried under this powerful pulse, which is of high radiation. Even research satellites, right, and exploratory space vehicles would be destroyed. So, this basically means that the one system that would give the US and NATO an advantage over Russia, right, would totally fry under an EMP, which is caused by a nuclear weapon which has been detonated in space.